Amy, you released some research just recently that looked at lakes and rivers, and it mentioned the notion of owners of water and getting those groups involved in prevention. So do you want to just talk about what the strategy is recommending in this area, and a little bit about your research and background and from a preventative perspective?
Yeah, so we've obviously done quite a lot of work at Royal Life Saving and with Richard Franklin and Peter Leggett at James Cook University about rivers. But I guess that broader category of inland waterways includes our lakes and dams. And while there's been a little bit of attention on farm dams, although not too much recently, we really haven't looked at lakes much. And I guess they're a more controlled environment in the sense that they may not be, well, some can be quite large, but rivers are particularly complicated with ownership and different owners on different banks, and the water versus the river bed versus the edge, you know, it can be quite complicated. With lakes, we felt that maybe that was going to be a little bit more manageable. So the research we did went and had a look at some of the land authorities or the owners of these waterways, and to go and have a look in particular at the information, if any had a water safety management plan or any available information that might include drowning prevention as opposed to other factors that weren't really relevant to drowning prevention. And we found that there wasn't a lot of that information in these plans, but there's pretty clear ownership of these environments. Some national parks, some private industry, some council or government owned. So I think it is an opportunity for us to talk with these landowners and even just from an insurance and a risk point of view to communicate the importance of putting these kind of messages, which from the research we know, swimming, boating, alcohol, supervision of children, cold water. I think we know what the messages would be. So it's about talking to those landowners and making sure we're incorporating that messaging into their safety information, their websites, their water safety plans, maybe even signage.
Yeah, it strikes me that the more we roll our sleeves up looking at issues with data and evidence, we find that there are so many different stakeholders involved in the problem and having a role in the solution. In an inland sense, who are the key stakeholders that we need to do a better job of engaging in prevention efforts?
Yeah, so I mean, we've talked about the lakes there and the landowners. I think with rivers really is council, local council, and also the communities around these rivers. We also have sort of touched on national parks. So that's also a key landowner or a group that would be responsible for those environments and therefore the safety of people visiting those environments. So I think we do know the groups, but again, we keep coming back to this personal responsibility and behaviour change angle. And I think different communities will face different issues, particularly when we go rural. You know, one strategy and a particular strategy from the city is not going to work out in the country. So it almost is on a river by river or a town by town basis of working with people, talking about the issues specific to that area and what people in charge and even the community are willing and able to do about it and supporting them in doing that. And so, Royal Life Saving's approach with community drowning prevention plans around inland waterways, I think it's really the right approach. Unfortunately, it's very time consuming and it can be a challenge, particularly when we move rurally and looking at distances to travel and small communities to reach. But I really do think it is the way forward for this kind of issue.
All right, let's have a look at a video if we can, Will.
We want to show you what's dangerous about this river, but we can't. That's the problem. You can't see ice-cold water, snags like tree branches or strong currents. So when enjoying our rivers, remember, wear a life jacket, avoid alcohol around water, never swim alone, and learn how to save a life. Our rivers are beautiful, but more Australians drown here than anywhere else. It's simple. Respect the river. Head to royallifesaving.com.au/respect the river for more information.
I hadn't quite realised the significance of the galahs and the cockies in the background. It sort of conjures up this great. Oops, we've got another video. Yeah, it conjures up this great sort of image of the countryside. You were talking about messaging, and so they were. With there was 4 or 5 key tips in that particular communication, but it was kind of overlaid with this idea that we couldn't show risks and hazards. Has that messaging changed as a consequence of the research you've been doing more recently, do you think?
No, I don't think so. I think we were still pretty much on the money there. I think there is still this underestimation of rivers as a risky location compared to a beach where, look, rips, very hard to spot. People think they can, but they really can't. You know, Rob's saying in the chat there, he dyes them to show people and now people think they're purple. So, you know, you've got that challenge to work with as well. But you don't, as we said in that advertisement, you can't see the hazards. And even the speed of the river can be quite deceptive. You really have to stand there. Talk about the think line. You have to stand there and think about it and have a look for a while just to even see how fast the water is moving. So I still do think that we were on the right track there in terms of people underestimating the risk at rivers. And really half that battle was to say it is a leading location for drowning. Don't underestimate the risk. Much like the beach situation, it is not tourists, it's local people, and even more so for rivers than beaches. So I think it really is about, as we said in the program name, it really is about showing respect to that environment and recognizing that it might be more dangerous than it initially appears. And yeah, we really had that struggle for quite a while coming up with that, the visualizations for the advertisement. How do you show something you can't show? And I think some of the initial evaluation that we did on that showed that it was quite effective in getting that message across, at least making people realize that rivers are a risky location and that they need to be treated with respect. So yeah, I think we're on the right track, and I think we need some more evidence and more work in the evaluation space, which is where really we need to be moving as a drowning prevention community anyway.
Yeah, and Stacey Pigeon last week was talking about the challenges of making sure that those messages land in a diverse population. So, you know, I think that was a point well made last week. I'd like to go to the next clip though, and let's get to alcohol, because this is your one of your favourite topics as well. Now, this is a moment of madness, Australia Day, I think, for women.
Yeah, 10, probably about 6 or 8.
What we're doing here at the Murray, it being Australia Day today, we're actually surveying and breathalyzing river users.
And what have you guys been doing today?
Today, floating down the river. And we've been drinking the whole time.
Keep going. Very good.
We floated down from Mungab to here for Australia Day. Had a few drinks.
But did you go in the
This research is a partnership between James Cook Uni and Royal Lifesaving. And what we're aiming to do is go beyond, I guess, our understanding of the coronial data and try and get understanding of general river users' attitudes towards river safety, what they do at the river, and if they're drinking at the river as well.
If I have a few drinks, I usually chuck my jacket on my life jacket and then I'll just float down.
I don't think that alcohol is a good idea when swimming. I think it's best just to keep it at home.
Quite often we find that young people get in the river and they float from one point to another, and they take a lot of risks. And some of those risks include drinking and doing a lot of silly things like jumping off bridges and other obstacles. So we need to focus on safety around the river, but more specifically educating young people about the features of the river and the features they need to avoid.
So this is an example of, I guess it's the great Australian challenge. These people are, in their minds, having fun. And the two go together, river that day and a drink. So how are we going to go about changing these high-risk behaviours on those sort of cultural iconic days?
Yeah, it is. It really is a challenge. We saw that link in the drowning data, but we didn't really know what the picture was amongst those who don't end up in the coronial system. So we went out and breathalyzed people at a few different river locations in a couple of states, and it just happened to include the Murray River being the leading river drowning black spot in the country, but also that we coincided that trip with Australia Day. And what we saw really did validate, I guess, what we unfortunately see in the coronial system is we had much higher average blood alcohol readings when we were breathalyzing people there compared to other days on Australia Day. And you might have seen in one of the shots, there were police over my shoulder, I think, when I was being interviewed. So that was actually a designated alcohol-free zone where we were breathalyzing, which I thought was really going to mess up my data. It didn't, because nobody was aware of that and the police weren't enforcing it. And I really do think it's this cultural thing where it's just assumed that we should be allowed to drink and we should be allowed to drink on Australia Day. And it's going to be bigger than just a river safety message or a drowning prevention message. This is all of us rethinking our relationship with alcohol and the risks we take and how much we drink. because, yeah, some of the readings that we recorded on Australia Day were pretty staggering, and to think that they're being combined with aquatic activity in what we know to be a risky environment was very concerning.
Yeah, and we're not talking just a little bit of alcohol, we're talking a lot, and we're talking about drugs quite often as well as a factor. Oh.
Yes, sorry, thought I unmuted, but I didn't.
Wouldn't be Zoom without an unmute episode. Yeah.
I know, it had to happen once. There we go, I've done it for everybody. Yes, so as you said, it's not just a couple of drinks. We had, from memory, I'm probably not going to get the numbers right, but I have seen that Alison has put a link to that paper. We saw average blood alcohol readings on Australia Day of 0.1, maybe 0.13. So if our legal upper driving limit's 0.05, that's approaching 3 times the limit. So that's a lot of alcohol being drunk. And I mean, we had a couple of people below 0.3, which is 6 times the legal limit on that day. So we had a lot of drinking happening, even when it was supposed to be a designated alcohol-free zone and police were watching people drink. So it was a lot of alcohol being consumed. And interestingly, the other surprising finding for us is that men make up 80% of river drowning statistics, even slightly higher when we look at river drownings with alcohol involvement. But we had equally high, if not higher, average blood alcohol readings amongst women at the river compared to men. So men are drinking and ending up drowning, but women are engaging in this high risk activity as well. So, you know, I think we're well within our rights to have a mates don't let their mates drink and drown, make the right call campaigns that focus on men, but we need to recognise that women are undertaking this kind of risky behaviour as well. And as you said, we often see in the coronial data that if someone is drinking, there's more likely to be a chance that illicit drugs have been consumed as well. And so if you think about that, that's double the risk of something going wrong when you're under the influence of a couple of different substances. So again, that's a whole nother level of understanding why people would take those risks. Do they even think it's a risk, and how we can communicate that it's really not the best idea.
Okay, thank you very much, Amy. I think we've covered the rivers and lakes section of the strategy really well. There's some links in the chat, so I'd encourage people to have a look at Amy's research. We're going to say goodbye to Amy, but we're going to bring Amy back a little bit downstream